Hey guys, I am Michelle Wysong Struck. I am at a suite rental in Dayton, Ohio, and this is my client Catherine. She's been coming to me for about 2 years. We're going to do a foil on her today, and I know that we had talked about foil speed. It's something that I think a lot of people get challenged with. I see it a lot on my Facebook feed. But what I want to make sure is that I'm kind of coming from a humble place when we're talking about this today, and maybe go over 3 different ways that we can cut down foil time. So this is actually not going to be a guest related video. This is going to be more of a colleague related video. Foil speed has a whole lot to do with what we are able to make as income. If it takes 2 hours to put a full head of foils in, then you're looking at an 8-hour day of maybe only getting 3 clients in. I do double book, and sometimes I'm able to see 6 clients a day. Sometimes I'm able to see 8 clients a day. It just kind of depends on the timing. But Catherine actually gets highlights, lowlights, and color in between the foils. So you're going to kind of see me work through that. But let's try. As you chime into this video, Linda, hey, how are you? If you can chime into this video and share with some people what your foil techniques are to bring down your timing, that would be great. So I really want this to come from a humble place. I get really kind of discouraged when I'm on some of these industry sites and I see educators that are really high up in their career kind of answer people in a distasteful way, and that it just turns me off. I've actually left a couple sites lately because of it. But let's see if we can, as a group, help people try to cut their foiling time down a little bit. So one of the things that I will show you that I do to kind of prep my day, one, I've got Catherine all ready to go. Everything that I was using on Catherine today, or I'm using on Catherine today, I already had ready to go. I use Fermar foils when I have the money and need a little bit more time. But today I'm actually using Reynolds foils on her. I've already pre-pulled them. And what I've done, you're going to see me kind of use a different technique. I'm not going to use my comb to push the foil up to the head. I'm actually going to do something a little different. So stay open-minded with me. But what I've done is I've pre-folded and pre-cut my foils so they are folded at the top so that we don't have to use our comb with them, and I'll show you how we do that. But that's a huge part of, I think, what slows down people's foiling times is sticking their comb up underneath of the foil and then up underneath of this section. If that's your comfort zone, that's okay, but I'm actually going to work through a couple sections and show you why that may not be necessary and maybe how to get that foiling time down. Okay, so I know a lot of people actually start in the back so that as they take longer, if this process is first, that they can actually rinse this out first. I can honestly tell you, in 20 years I've never done that. I have never had to rinse a client out halfway through their processing time. And it's not that it's not okay. That's fine. If you want to do that, that's cool. But I always actually start in the front because I want to see the lightness on the top of their head rather than back here in the back. So if it makes you feel comfortable to start in the back first, that's cool, but I'm going to start in the front. I always try to talk a guest into letting me take a small piece of that front dark first. That way, if there's somebody that pulls their hair back in a ponytail, I don't have a blinding blonde foil right here. Hey Dreama, how are you? Hey Christina, how are you? Candy and Christina, you guys are going to kind of get a little industry teaching here of what we do on a daily basis. So I'm just going to slice out a really thin part. I'm actually going to slice her here. And instead of using my comb, I'm actually just going to put that folded edge right up against her. So you can see, look down for me, you can see that that's right up on her scalp. I've not had anybody ever complain that my foils aren't close enough or anything like that, but all I've done is just taken this right here, use that folded edge on the foil, come right up under it and place it. That's it. Can you see how if I were to take this and wrap my comb around the foil and then place it and then make sure that that's in there, that takes a little bit more time. So let's maybe step out of the box a little bit, and instead of putting that comb up into your foil like that, sorry, don't mean to step across, just take that folded edge and come up underneath like that. Does that make sense? So something to try. But I'm going to flip through a couple of foils here. This is going to be her darker color of the highlight, low light. The other thing I see people do is that on these Instagram videos, people are brushing this color in 200 times. I'm using Wella color. It's generally pretty thick, but if you're taking thin enough sections, just loading your brush properly and putting it on there, 1 or 2 sweeps is enough. Fold it. I just folded it twice. So I know that on some of the Instagram sites, especially like Process Perfect, people come in here and fold this foil an extra couple of times, and that's cool if that's what you want to do. But those 3 things, meaning putting your comb up underneath of the foil and placing it, and then kind of making sure that it's right there, over painting your chemical onto the hair, and then folding that into a perfect envelope, takes so much time out of your foil. It really, for me, doesn't have anything to do with how close I'm placing her. So this is going to be her blonde foil right behind it, and I'm going to weave that out. If you want to slice, that's cool. Pick up a foil, it's pre-folded, bam, it's right in there like that. So Catherine comes into me every 6 to 7 weeks, and all I'm doing is retouching the blonde at the root. So my foil process with her is 2 blondes to 1 dark. I'm going to weave out my second blonde foil, fold it up, push your foil right up to the scalp, load the brush, and you're not starting right to the top of the foil. You're coming down a little bit and then feathering upwards as you go. Come in, fold it once, fold it twice, your foil is locked in there. I know a lot of people, for some reason, when they go ahead and fold those sides over, they feel like the foil's locked in there more. Her foil's locked in there. It's not going to go anywhere, it's not going to move. And then when I go back to paint her in between the foil, it's not going to go anywhere. So right behind, we're again going to do a dark foil. I'm going to slice that one out. So I would say, from foil placement wise, I am probably what I would call an 80-20. I'm an 80% in the foil, 20% out. Catherine has, I would say, a normally thick head of hair. She's on the normal to coarse side. She has a little bit of wave to her hair. So her hair isn't super soft. It grips the foil pretty well. So we just did a dark. We weaved that blonde one. Foil pre-folded. Come in there, load my brush. 1, 2, 3. milligram. That is enough. You don't have to keep painting and painting and painting. So why don't I have to keep painting? My bleach mixture is Blonde Or. It's with 20 volume right now, and the bleach mixture on this calls for 1 ounce of powder to 2 ounces of developer. I like it on her just a little stiffer than that, so I added just a little bit more powder. If I were going to, say, paint down the strand on someone, I'm going to do 2 things to change that. I'm going to make my bleach mixture a little bit more fluid, a little bit more runny, so that I get better coverage and better lift, because your lift is actually not as much in the developer, it matters, but it also is in how thick or thin your bleach mixture is. So as you paint it on there, if your bleach mixture is thicker, then you're going to have to put it in there and press it into the foil more times. The other thing that is a little bit easier on a long-haired client, and I just discovered this last year, and again, these are just Reynolds foils. These are, you know, typical cheap foils. I love From Our foils, but they're super expensive. This is my new little toy. So this is a From Our dispenser, and this is awesome for long-haired foiling. So what it does is you just pull it out. It automatically cuts it, and it will give you as long of a foil as you want, and it folds it at the top for you. So if I have somebody that has hair down to, you know, their waist or whatever, and I need a foil that long, it will custom cut every foil without having to prep them beforehand, which is kind of cool. Catherine, are you comfortable?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So right in here, we'll leave another dark one. So I'm going to kind of fly through about 5 foils here. This is my dark. 1, 2. And I am able to, most people I think are able to pick up their own foil pattern. I consulted with her before we started, just to make sure that we were doing the same thing. Sometimes I pre-mix people before they come in. That helps save time. And I'm sorry that my nails are atrocious. I kind of look like I've been working on a car or something, but I know on all these Instagram videos, all the girls, their nails are like totally on point, and mine are not there. So another reason why I don't fold my foils into perfect envelopes. Here, we're actually in Dayton, Ohio, and Dreama can attest for this, Linda can attest for this. The water here is atrocious. So sometimes when you don't feel or see that water on the hair or what it does to the hair chemically, and you put lightener with it, or say an 11 series or a 12 series with it, and you fold that foil into a perfect little envelope, guess what it does? The minerals from the water and your chemical find their way out the top, which is where you get the bleed lines from. And if you ever have felt foils that are hot all by themselves without heat, or foils that start to swell, it's looking for a way out. And it's something that maybe you don't want to put that client under heat because of it. But I don't fold my foils into perfect envelopes like that, mostly because of that reason, especially pool chemicals. So Catherine is a full foil today, and then, like I said, we'll go in between the foils to do her base color. I don't do base color first and then foil, because I feel like if you combine the lightener with the color, you're going to get some unwanted warmth. Which, you know, when you watch videos about balayage and they're talking about blending the two colors and unwanted warmth, the one thing that you don't want to do if you need to stay on the cool side is blend your root color into your balayage lightener, because where they meld together, that will inevitably create some warmth, and it'll do the same thing at the root. So normally for her process, I book out 45 minutes to apply, 45 minutes to process, and 45 minutes to cut and blow dry. If she were a new guest, that would be an hour to apply, 45 minutes to process, and maybe 45 minutes to 60 minutes to cut and blow dry. But at least that, look down for me, at least that hour gives me a little extra time to consult. And since people do book online, I really try my best when somebody books a new chemical to call them on the phone, to make sure that they're booked for the right thing, to make sure that if there is something that they expect that I don't normally carry, that I have it. So we're almost to a stopping point here. But see how much easier that goes when you take the equation of putting the foil up underneath your comb and trying to put that up underneath of the section. Like, look how much faster that goes. I don't have to prep a foil to put in the hair. You know, and if it makes you more comfortable, or your chemical that you use requires a little bit more brushing, that's okay. But there's two quick ways right there between prepping the foil under your comb and only folding the foil twice instead of folding it 4 times. That can easily cut 15 minutes off your time. I mean, if there's people out there that are taking 2 hours to put in foils, or even an hour, you know, is a lot. Now, here in Dayton, most people, I think, are still doing quite a bit of maintenance. Like, I don't have too many guests that are coming in twice a year for foils. Okay, I'm gonna have you come up. So at this point, what I'm gonna do, I've just foiled her top, and this goes back to, you know, why don't we fold the sides? So all I'm gonna do is, I'll get on the other side here, is just kind of tip this up a little bit, just like that, so that I have a clean line at the top. And then of course that hair's tickling her face, so we'll get this out of her way. Push that over. And then I know my next section is going to be sectioned off right behind her ear. And then that's my side section, and it's going to be the same on the other side. So that also cuts me down some time, because I'm not pre-sectioning her into 5 sections because I already kind of know where I'm going to stop, which is going to be right at the top. I don't foil her on a part because she doesn't have a real deep part to begin with, but if you wanted to, you could. Okay. So on the sides here, what I was taught at one point was to foil horizontal or parallel to the ground. And what does that do? When you pull this back into a ponytail, it leaves stripes that they'll complain about. So instead, I'm gonna have you tilt your head for me. What I'm doing is actually slicing her hairline out at a diagonal. And then again, just like I did in the front, if a guest will let me, I will actually slice out their thinnest section at the face and put a dark foil in there so that when they pull this back into a ponytail, they don't have this blinding piece of blonde that is, you know, going to be there when they pull that back. So it grows out a little bit more gracefully. So again, right up on the scalp, you don't need your comb to get there. Her low light color, I'm going to have you cover yourself for me. I'm going to have you cover your jeans. I can be messy. Her low light color is 7N and 8N with 10 volume. So there, I'm going to weave that out. Again, right on a diagonal. Real close to the scalp. Starting about an inch from my parting and then just slightly kind of feathering up to it. There we go. So again, on the sides, we'll do a 2-to-1 ratio. So 2 blondes to 1 dark. I'm still able to pick up my foil pattern from the last time. And I find too that when you put these in at a diagonal on the side, 1, they look a lot better, but 2, or look a lot more natural, but 2, you don't have to use quite as many foils as you would foiling horizontal. If you're foiling horizontal on the sides, in order to keep them from getting stripy when they pull it back in a ponytail, you're having to use a lot of foils to blend those 2 colors together. So if you foil it the way the hair lives, is what they call it, then it doesn't take quite as much foil to make that happen. So the salon that, right now I work in a suite type environment. I've been in a suite type environment for 10 years. But the salon that I worked at before was a commission-based salon. And of course, they're all about shuffling clients in and out as fast as possible. We had what was called a 30-30-30 timing, meaning that we took clients every 30 minutes, which is not always feasible. God forbid, especially if a client comes in late or something happens, you know, the client usually has to go without a blow dry. But from a foiling speed standpoint, we were not allowed to do hair out on the floor until we could get a full head of foils done in 25 minutes. So we learned really quickly what little things we could do to cut our timing without cutting quality. Now, I I do have some clients that are much, much more blonde than Catherine, and I use the same technique and put the same amount of foils in somebody's head. Of course, if they're a little thicker, there's more foils, but I do have clients that you would probably call platinum. I don't tone them, but they're pretty darn blonde. I couldn't make them more blonde. And I use that same spacing. I don't know how many foils I'm putting in the head, but it's definitely not taking me an hour and a half to retouch a client. Now, granted, if I had to completely change her color, say she was a level 4 and her hair's like down to here, one, I'd probably thin out my bleach mixture a little bit. I might start her off with a slower developer on the top and then finish her with a faster one in the back, like 10 on the top, 20 on the sides, 30 in the back. Again, if it makes you feel more comfortable to start in the back, that's cool too. It doesn't mean it's anything wrong, but those 3 things really could allow us to cut our timing at least by 15 minutes, like I said. So that side's done. Just like we did on the other side, I'm going to flip her foils back, just really carefully. Now, the Fermar foils out of the box and off of the roll are a little stiffer. They actually stay in the hair a little bit better, so they're kind of nice to use on a fine-haired client, and they're nice to use if you haven't prepped stuff, or you're really busy and you don't have time to prep stuff. Again, I'm annoying her with that hair in her face, so we'll get that out of her face. Okay. So I've already created my section there. It's nice and clean. And then we'll come behind the ear, create my section again. So there was no reason to pre-section her or stress over my section before I started her. So we'll bring her this way a little bit. Sorry if I'm filming up underneath my arm. Okay, tilt your head a touch. Again, on an angle, clean section. They're still super thin, right up against the scalp. If my section was too thick with the thickness of Wella color, I wouldn't get the coverage, I'd get blotchiness. So the thicker your sections with a thicker color, yeah, you will get, hey Michelle Golden, hey, how are you? Good to see you, thanks for your support. But if my sections are too thick, obviously I'm going to get splotchy coverage with Coleston. I'm using Coleston on her because I do have to blend up into my root color, which is exactly the same. It's a 7/8, but it's going to be with 20 volume. This I can either use 10 volume or pastel. So the other thing too that I'm having to watch with her is her hair takes a little darker because I do a Brazilian blowout on her probably once a year, and so it changes the porosity a little bit. Her hair is normally a touch frizzy, so I have found that after we do a Brazilian blowout on her, her hair is, while it's still healthier, it's a little bit more porous, and it will actually take her low light darker. So I've had to bump it. Another thing that I do to kind of save time is I'm going to be working with 3 bowls and brushes with her today. And at any given time, I probably have about 20 bowls and brushes in my station ready to go so that I don't have to rinse bowls and brushes constantly. We also don't have a break room here, so I have to rinse bowls and brushes in the sink, which I hate. I don't want to do it in front of a client. It splashes it everywhere. It's messy. So I actually stick my dirty bowls and brushes in a dish pan underneath my station, underneath my, like in my cabinet. And then at the end of the day, if I want to do them then I'll take them home. Or I will, do them the next morning or something. So I think too, the one thing that I see that when I used to teach apprenticeship, so I came from a salon that, like I said, was commission, and I taught apprenticeship classes for 12 years. And the one thing that I saw apprentices struggle with was how to get that color all the way down the strand in a foil that was half the length of the hair, right? So that's where that From Our foil dispenser comes in. It's so nice. But I see them struggle with that. So let's touch base on that here in a second. We're going to do a blonde foil again. And I'm going to do a blonde foil here as well. And then my next foil is going to be a dark. Got a little too much up there, so I'm just going to use my finger to pad that. So this is going to be my dark foil, and I want to get chemical all the way down the strand on a foil that is half the size of the section I'm working on. And how many of us, when we started, did this thing where we just like scrubbed hair into a circle and just prayed to God that we got it all in there? That, that's what gets your nails dirty. So anyhow, what I would suggest doing is you have your tension on the end of the hair, then carefully just fold it up on itself and dollop your other side of your brush loaded with color, put your hand underneath of it, and carefully paint that down. This whole swirling stuff, like you can fold that as many times as you need to. That probably, I think, is the one thing that I saw that, at least for me, took the most practice, was learning how to carefully fold that hair up into the foil. Now, I'm not using Olaplex on her because I very rarely have to go over top of a previously bleached section. I know a lot of people like to use Olaplex all the time and then build that into their cost. And for me, I just don't find that necessary with every guest. There's certainly clients, I drop stuff a lot. There are certainly clients that I mix it into every mixture, but Catherine isn't one of them. The other thing that I do to save myself time is I'm a comb dropper. So I constantly have like 3 or 4 combs ready to go that are clean. I have barbicide in my cabinet always. I don't ever touch a comb on the floor. I know our clients are like, oh, go ahead, it's okay. No, it's not okay. And we're almost done with this section. And then that's our dark foil. There we go. Okay. So on the sides here where her hair is completely annoying and in her face, we're going to do the same thing that we did at the top, is just take our hand gently underneath and fold these foils outwards. They don't move. It's okay. And then come to the other side and do the same thing, just fold that corner back. So again, for you guys that are kind of tuning in late, I'm just trying to help some people that, I see on all these Facebook sites that they're taking an hour and a half to 2 hours to put in foils, and it bums me out because the girls that are taking an hour and a half to 2 hours to put in foils are maximum doing 3 clients a day. And you know, depending on what your overhead looks like, that might not be the best way to make money, you know. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying let's help each other figure out how to get foils in the head faster. So again, I didn't pre-section her, but there's my back section. So normally what I do is I split this into 2, completely get my one side out of the way, so I'm actually ending in the back. When I come up to the top here on this section, so I've got like maybe 3 more foils I can put in through the top, I stop, you'll watch me stop, and come to the other side, complete it, and I'll actually do this as 1 foil all the way across, or 3 foils on top of each other. And that way I get a little bit of a better seamless blend over top of their whirl or their split back here. Okay, I'm gonna have you look down for me. Now she has kind of a low hairline like I do. So again, some people foil horizontal and parallel to the floor. I, for the fact of them pulling their hair up, like to foil on an angle. So a steeper angle like this rather than a horizontal parallel to the floor kind of thing. And again, if you're coming in late, I like to take a really thin foil with my first section, and if I can talk that guest into it, I like to do them with a dark foil in my first subsection, I guess you'd say, in that section. So if this is my section right here on the right side, I'm taking the thin section and putting a dark one up underneath there. Her natural level is I'd say a dusty level 7. It's not super warm. So one thing I see on the Facebook forums when people are trying to talk other stylists into not starting in the back and into starting in the front, one of their reasons for doing that is saying that if the client is late, it allows you to put less foils in the back and concentrate on what they want to see, which is the top, the sides, and a little bit of the crown. And it keeps you from penalizing them and penalizing yourself, because if you start in the back and you've got this great momentum in the back and then get to the front and you're running behind, or you need to speed your front up because your back is already done, you don't have the ability to do that. But if you start in the front and you need to be done a little sooner, then you can start spacing your sections a little bit further apart without your guest feeling like you've neglected the back of her hair. Look down for me. I have had clients come in from other states that have told me, oh yeah, I get a full foil. And you get to the back and you find out that they haven't been foiling anything underneath the occipital bone, but they've been charging them for a full foil the whole entire time. So my blondes I am weaving, and that keeps me from getting bleed as well. And then my darks, I'm not weaving every time I'm slicing out. So Michelle, are you still on here? Yep. Michelle, what do you do to chime in there? You guys, all you guys, like industry guys, because there's a whole bunch of people on Mags Kavanaugh's site that talked about this today. There was like 150 people on this one question, and I'm like, the easiest way to help people with this is just to do a really quick video and maybe share what kind of techniques that we're doing or how we're shaving off time without sacrificing quality. So, like Michelle, what would you say that you do to shave down time? And Amanda, what do you do? You're in the same boat. You came from a salon that booked 30, 30, 30. What do you do to shave down time? Okay, where are we at with time here? Obviously, it's just taking a little longer because I am stopping and you know, kind of giving some instruction. That was another thing that I saw on the question today on Mags Kavanaugh's site, was that, and this is what she had to actually say about it, was she's positive that people stop doing what they're doing to talk to their guests when they're in an intense conversation. And it takes years of practice, I think, to be able to do both. And you know, if you are doing a new technique that takes all of your time, and maybe if that new technique is just not putting your comb underneath the foil anymore and you need to concentrate, it's okay not to talk. You don't have to talk through the whole thing. I do a whole lot of graduated bobs, and in order for me to get the back done correctly, I have to be paying attention, and I may not talk through the back of a graduated bob. But if you're somebody that is trying to develop your speed, and the speed will come, but if you're somebody that's trying to develop your speed and you're not yet double booking, you can use all that time during their processing to talk. Do you see how much easier that is, not having to use that comb? And Amanda, I'm sure after 8 years, I still take an hour for a partial. I'm so glad it's helpful. At least somebody's getting something out of it. Cool. Well, you know, and I'm so glad that you chimed in and told me that. That totally makes my day. This is the first video that I've done towards colleagues. I do some videos for my guests, especially like about blow drying and stuff like that. But I want to make sure that I'm coming from a humble place, because it drives me crazy to see people that we look up to answer people online in a distasteful way. It makes me nuts. Like I was saying earlier, I actually left a site this week because I couldn't stand the way that the educators were answering people back. It was really rude, really rude. Okay, so we're at this last section in the back, and I'm gonna come at her the same way. So instead of foiling horizontally to across or parallel to the floor, I'm coming at her from an angle. I'm going to step to the other side over here. And tilt your head for me. Perfect. So, you know, it's okay. You don't have to, this chair moves for you. It doesn't, it's not a requirement that your guest sits in the mirror and looks at themselves the whole time. It's not a requirement that they're not an active participant in their color. If you need them to tilt their head, it's okay. You can ask them. My mother-in-law can't do it, so she's a little bit more difficult. She's an angled bob, and that's quite a challenge. But you know, if somebody's comfortable and is able to move their head, of course, ask them. Okay, I'm going to move her this way, so I apologize. Why do I look to put a dark piece under the front blonde? I like to put a dark piece in the beginning of every section at the bottom, because if they're pulling their hair back in a ponytail, there inevitably with a blonde piece is going to be a ... or a little bit of a mesh where it runs me at risk of when they pull their hair back that I've got this little bit of evidence of how much grow out that they have. So if they'll let me, and most people do, I might take the tiniest slice of section, or what do they call them? Strand lights. You just take a baby light or the finest section that you can weave out and put that dark there. That way they maybe don't have so much evidence of that grow out. Now, the one thing that I will say that I probably shoot myself in the foot with is when a new client comes in to me, I tell them that their color being, or their cut being low maintenance is super important to me. And it's not necessarily that I want them to stay out of here for 3 to 6 months at a time. Catherine does come in every 6 weeks. She really doesn't have a lot of gray. She probably thinks that she does, but she is used to that kind of maintenance, and that's okay. But I don't want this wicked obvious grow out, like when they pull their hair back and they're looking in the mirror at 6 months or 6 weeks, they're like, oh my God, I need my hair done. I really don't want to put people in that kind of color. At least in this region, what I find with my clients is that if they are in here too often and they're spending too much money in here or more than what they would normally budget, they're not going to come back. I feel like I'm pretty median priced. I'm definitely not as high as I was at a commission salon. And I do something else that's really bad. I bundle my pricing. But out of respect for my guests, I just try to keep things as livable as possible and as budget friendly as possible. I'm certainly not the cheapest in town. The other thing that I really will say gets on my nerves too, and this is kind of off subject, are when people during their consultation are not upfront with pricing. It's something that I see that comes up on all the sites about how they had a client that maybe text them later on in the day and asked why something was as expensive as it was. You know, if you feel a ton of conviction about why your client should use Olaplex and how much it costs, I think when you explain to them why and why you're passionate about using it, they're going to be okay with it. And you don't necessarily have to explain consequence. Well, if you don't use it, this is what's going to happen. If you're that convicted about it or have that much conviction about it, then maybe you say no and I'm not going to proceed. without it. I don't think too many people push the hair in that direction. But you know, certainly when you're using fashion colors and you're doing, you know, Pulp Riot and stuff like that, it's darn near impossible to do without it. So again, as I'm coming to the top, I left a couple pieces out on the opposite side. And for those of you that are tuning in late, what I've done is these are Reynolds foils, and not only did I pre-tear them, but I pre-folded them at the top. So like I will take, say, a section of 20 foils that I tore, fold the top over, and then separate them out. That truly is, for me, one of my things at Christmas time that really makes my day go smooth is making sure that I come in a half hour early to make sure foils are prepped. There is one sure way to make myself stress out and give myself anxiety, and that's when I don't have foils torn or ready to go. So I generally have a box of Fermar foils ready to go in a case where, you know, my daughter has ran me behind a little bit or something in the morning. That way I'm not in a panic. So I'm just coming up here to the top. Catherine came in at 4:45. We're right at the 5:45 mark. I've been talking through the whole thing. Okay, so, yep, you got it. I'm going to have you tilt your head back just a little bit. So what I'm left with here is a small section, like a triangular shaped section at the top. Get this hair out of the way so you can see. So a small triangular shaped section at the top that allows me to come in and go all the way across rather than having to part this in the middle like this, because typically that's where that split is, right? So if I stop like an inch underneath of her cowlick or her split or her whirl, whatever you want to call it, that allows me to come across it, and I'm going to definitely weave that section so that I don't have any bleeding or lines or spotting or anything like that. Okay, I'm going to have you look down for me. So very carefully, I'm weaving a super, so you can see that it's thin, but you can also see that it's not a very wide section. It's maybe a half a finger long. Starting down in the mid-range and then working your way up so that you're not putting that giant fresh dollop of chemical right up on that line. That's where you'll get a bleed line. Okay, come up a bit. There you go. So this section's going to be a little wider. Fine weave through there. There you go. And then I'm sure most people do it, but I'm still going to touch base on it because I don't know who's on here. But I always look at the last foil that I did on the top. So this foil right here, I always check myself, especially since I'm doing 2-to-1. I check myself, this is a dark foil. So in this section right here, I know that I need to put a light foil right up against it. So I need to give myself the room to do that. meaning that this next foil is going to be dark, and then I'm going to put a light foil over top of it so that I don't have a grouping of like 2 or 3 dark foils right in a row, or 2 or 3 or 4 light foils right in a row, because if there's one thing that's going to look bad when they leave is not keeping track of how many foils, like did I do a chunk of 4 blondes or did I do a chunk of 4 darks? You know, it happens to all of us, and it looks bad, and you know, when you're blow drying it, you're like, oh man, what did I just do? So we'll put that dark foil there. And then this last foil will be a weaved blonde. Okay. There we go. So let's calculate the 15 minutes of talking I did in there. She came in at 4:45, draped her, reconsulted with her, mixed her color, got this whole thing ready to go, make sure you guys can see, and then we've got probably a good 45 minutes and a full head of foils on her. She's about a ratio of 80-20, so 80 in the foils, 20 left out. And now what I'm going to do is put color in between her foils. So what you need to consider when you're putting color in between the foils, I'm not going to show that video, otherwise this video will be really long. But we need to, because we need her root color to develop correctly, we have to slow down our lightener developer. And if that means cutting it down to like a 5, or putting Olaplex in it to slow it down, like maybe you use a 10 volume and put just a skosh more Olaplex in it, like we used to do when it first came out, to slow it down just a little bit. I like to use the other side of the foil when I'm low lighting. Yeah, exactly. Where that wouldn't work with her is that I'm doing 2 blondes to 1 dark. So like with the Fermar foils in the box, the cool thing about those is while they're more expensive, they make them in different colors. So if you are an alternator of 1 dark, 1 light, 1 dark, 1 light, then 1 pulls out magenta, 1 pulls out silver, 1 pulls out magenta, 1 pulls out silver. So yeah, whatever you need to do to keep track of it. But I'm going to shut this video off. I need to drape her around her neck with a towel, and then I'm going to do her color in between the foils. If you guys have any questions, let's all help each other here. I specialize in a couple different things. I do probably 90% of what I do, 40 hours a week, is foil and cut. I do specialize in doing graduated and angled bobs, and I'd say probably my other favorite thing to do is extension work. I don't do the beaded strand or the NBR type, but I do halo, tape extensions, and bonded tip extensions. So if it's something that you guys want to see and you want to, you know, take a look, we can do that. What did you say? Keep it running. I want to see this part. Okay, we can do that. Okay. So, Dreama, I already have her formula mixed up. If you're someone that takes a little bit more time, maybe you don't pre-mix her chemical. And of course my glove ripped. That'll be fun. So I'm using Coleston 88/0 and 77/0 with 20 volume, which was the same formula that I used only with 10 volume. Now, when I worked with an assistant, the owner of our salon encouraged us to let our assistant do this part. And it was the one part that they always had a challenge with. Or am I using the new formulation? No, I'm scared to death. Anyhow, when we would let an apprentice do this, the one challenge that they had was when you're going back to take it out, you'd always see if they missed a spot. So it's really important to make sure that the first couple times that you do this, that you're watching what you're doing. So I'm just draping her. I don't usually drape my foil clients like this, but if I'm doing an all over color, it keeps it from going down into the cape. So knowing that I want the front to develop first, and knowing that she wants her hair out of her face as soon as I can get it out of her face, I'm actually going to start right here at the back where the front section and the back section meet, and I'm going to move forward. So I'm going to try and do this as easy as I can. So I'm going to carefully re-flatten these foils. Again, the Reynolds foils are a little softer. You didn't love it? Oh, don't tell me that. Anybody out there that knows of a Wella class that we can all go to, let us know, because it really concerns me. Okay, so knowing that I foiled her 80-20, that 20% of hair that's left out is what we're going to be doing the root of. So I'm really kind of aggressively pushing that down to make sure that I get the coverage I need. Flipping a foil down, grabbing the hair, hitting that, and then hitting the other side as well. Making sure that I'm going down into the crevices. Again, holding that hair all the way across, all the way across. Another foil, all the way across, all the way across. Where this might get a little challenging is if you were working on a super short-haired client that you're not able to lock the hair into the foil very well. I'm going to have you tip back like that a little bit. I think my problem is honestly my height. Oh. Okay. I have heels on, girl. Okay. So hit it there, hit it there. And when I say heels, I mean cowboy boots. I'm in cowboy boots all the time. They're super comfy. Okay. Foil there. Catherine, is that comfortable?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so the reason I do this, and I don't have a whole lot of clients that I do this with, the reason I do the color after is so that my guest doesn't have to think about being in here for 4 hours at a time. Because essentially what you're doing is, if you're doing this as 2 separate processes, you're putting the color on, letting it sit for 45 minutes, rinsing it out, drying it, refoiling it. I mean, it could easily be a 4-hour appointment. And not too many clients want to do that every 6 weeks. Now, if her hair was a little thicker, I might be a little bit slower about it, just making sure that I'm getting down into the cracks and crevices the way that I should. You are Superwoman. No. Wendy from the UK. Wow, you just got your first batch of Coleston, and we're proceeding with much. Oh. What did I just do? I turned my comments off. No, I did not. Okay. I don't know how to turn the comments back on. Let me finish it.